wants me to do it this way. Good.
Hello, Facebook Live. I'm Avery Haynes, and you are looking at one of the edit suites in W5, along with producer Derek Miller and editor Andre Lapalme, who is all of us have been working on an investigation into Jehovah's Witnesses and the two-witness rule. So for months now, we've been sort of going across the country. We've been in London. We've been talking about stuff happening in Australia.
Multiple countries.
Yeah.
Right. United States, England, and there are elements from Australia in our story and all over, actually.
And I think that, you know, I think both of us, we've all felt that what we've learned about the Jehovah's Witnesses has been so mind-opening about their policies. Because most of us, you know, think about Jehovah's Witnesses as the kind of polite, kind folks who knock on the door on a Saturday.
Yeah, we have this much information because everybody is familiar with that knock and people being polite and nice. But I think for the most part, people don't actually invite them in and talk to them about what they believe, and so they just know a tiny bit. And I think we all certainly learned tons of stuff that we just did not know.
So the things for me, I mean, you know, so Jehovah's Witnesses, just as a crash course, because there's a lot of this coming up on Saturday, but a crash course is they believe in Armageddon, so any day now the world is going to end. They have a very strict set
and we're not being flippant about that too.
No.
They actually believe. There are children who think that maybe tomorrow or next week is the day, right?
And so they live in that fear of everything is about making sure that Jehovah is pleased and is living by Jehovah's word. Anybody who breaks any of the rules is shunned, so that if their mom or dad walks down the street, they are invisible. They don't exist anymore. And so they live under the fear of shunning, extreme shunning.
Yeah, and we've heard cases even within families of teenagers who have been disfellowshipped, shunned, and their own parents will give them dinner but not talk to them. And their siblings won't talk to them. So you can imagine the power of that force having a lot of influence in how people's behavior will, you know, unfold.
And so, the biggest component that for me was interesting was this idea that for Jehovah's Witnesses, anybody who is not a witness is to some degree tainted by or an agent of Satan. And that includes police, that includes government agencies.
Media. I didn't mean to point at you when I said that.
Well, we're all media in here. But so that is really an interesting precursor to know before you get into what our story is about, which is this two-witness rule. And the two-witness rule stipulates, and this is doctrine that's taken from the Bible, that if you have an allegation of a sin or a crime that has been done, you have to have two witnesses to have seen it in order for it to be investigated further by the organization.
That's right, yeah. And they take it from Scripture in both the New Testament and the Old Testament. And it starts, you know, you may not convict unless there are two witnesses or three witnesses, and then the act can be established.
Like an eyewitness, or it interrupt an eyewitness?
An eyewitness, so somebody has to see it. So anybody who knows anything about the way pedophiles operate, sorry about that, you know that the chances of there ever being a witness to sexual abuse are slim to none. And this is where legal folks will talk about the fact that this is really the basis for what is the allegation of a cover-up, because if you're not sending that information onto police of these allegations because there weren't two people to witness it, pedophiles are getting off scot-free.
It's important to say that the Jehovah's Witnesses themselves will say that, listen, we do report these crimes when we are legally obliged to do that in jurisdictions, but what we found is a lot of people who have certainly said that that was not my experience. That is not what happened when I reported to my parents or to the elders. In fact, often it was, it's an outrageous question, do you have two witnesses? And if the answer is no, the answer has been, leave it in Jehovah's hands.
And because this is followers are sort of restricted so much in the way that they live their lives, when a child goes to a mom in the organization and says, "Mom, I was sexually abused," their first inkling and reaction is to take that to the elders, not to go to the police. And what our investigation has found is what the elders do in every single case, what they do is they send that information onto a very robust legal department that they have. And our investigation has found that while they may say that they don't discourage people from going to police, the practice has not been to call the police.
Right. Well, the practice generally is to not talk to the outside world, worldly people, as they refer to them. We would be worldly people.
Yeah.
So what is the legal department?
This is the other thing that most people would be surprised to know. Jehovah's Witnesses are a multi-billion-dollar organization. In Canada, of the 85,000 charities that are registered in this country, the Jehovah's Witnesses rank in the top 15. They're bringing in like 80 million tax-free dollars a year because they're a charity. They have a lot of money, and they have a massive legal department that spends millions and millions of dollars in the United States, especially, we know that has been documented, settling quietly out of court settlements involving historic sex abuse cases like this one.
Wow.
And I want to show you. So this is one of the interesting things. So all kinds of things are happening around the world that is putting pressure on, including the $66 million lawsuit that's been filed in Canada, a class action suit. And we have an exclusive interview with the man who is the face of that lawsuit, who suffered harrowing abuse as a very young child. But another component that I found really interesting is something called the Vast Apostate Army. And these are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, people who are no longer a part of the organization. So every single one of them has been shunned. Didn't you find that weird to be around them, knowing that for all of those people, because they're speaking out against the religion, they're an apostate, which is someone who has
renounced their religion,
which is a big sin in Jehovah's Witnesses world. So each of those people has given up all of their family members and all of their friends to speak out against the religion.
And they don't come from one geographic area. They come from all over. These people knew each other only through their online handles, right? We went to this event outside the world headquarters in New York, where the headquarters of the Jehovah's Witnesses is based. And people from Australia, from Ireland, from across the United States and Canada, who had never actually met each other before, but they immediately had something in common, probably lots of things in common. It was this treatment and this background.
Because they've lived such sort of sheltered lives, they're now out and coming to this protest that we went to. But and you have to wait and watch the rest on Saturday. But the one thing I do want to show you guys is that when one of the protesters had a thing that he did 60 different times across the United States before he met us, which is the crashed Kingdom Halls, which is the Jehovah's Witnesses church. And on the day that we were there, I went in with a bunch of the protesters. Everyone had their cell phones sort of recording. And it was such a powerful thing. Whether it's right or wrong to crash a religious organization's sermon, I won't weigh in on.
When she says crash, she means they walked in without...
without being announced. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and then spread out, and then they started interrupting the service.
Standing up and talking about how the organization had hurt them. And I don't, Andre, is there a way of pulling that up? Maybe we can just show a little bit, yeah.
Society in New York is being investigated. I'm talking here, sir, I'm sorry.
A dozen former Jehovah's Witnesses have infiltrated this Kingdom Hall. It's a few miles from the religious sect's world headquarters in New York State. Among them, Canadian Tricia Frangina from Edmonton.
My father sexually abused me for the first 14 years of
They say Jehovah's Witnesses policies fail to protect child sex abuse victims, shield pedophiles, and shun people who speak out. And they want this congregation to hear what they have to say.
I was raped and was told you shouldn't have done that, and I was disfellowshipped for it. 18 years old and not allowed to have my mother talk to me for a year.
One after another, the protesters stand up to make disturbing allegations. Allegations that many of these congregants have likely never heard before.
My ex-husband is a pedophile. He raped 2 children in the Kingdom Hall. He is still allowed to be talked to by everybody.
This is an organization that's supposed to love and protect children.
Your invitation to be here has been...
So that's just like part of what I thought that was a really powerful part of the piece of it.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily agree with this approach, but it is peaceful, civil disobedience. And it's, you can say it's flashy, but yes, that is what happens. That's how you get attention. And sometimes that is the vehicle for change, is when you force people to watch.
Sorry to interrupt. It's very moving for me, and we're getting a ton of engagement on Facebook. A lot of people are commenting, and our views there's a lot of views right now. And I know that there's a lot of engagement on this story on W5's Facebook page as well. A lot of people are commenting right now. One of the things that people are asking is, for those that don't know about Jehovah's Witnesses, what is sort of the draw to this religion? Like, the people that are in it, that speak highly of it and that are dedicated to it, what would they say is the reason for its draw?
The Jehovah's Witnesses would say that they are more of a pure form of the early church Christianity that that people would have celebrated, hundreds of years ago. They would make the argument that traditional Protestantism has gone in so many different directions, but they have come back to a more pure place. However, there's some significant differences. There are a lot of Christians who would actually say Jehovah's Witnesses are not Christians, and for one reason, they do believe in Jesus Christ, but they don't believe that Jesus Christ is divine, like Catholics do or Anglicans do. They believe in a Father, a Son, and Holy Spirit as three different people. So that's why they're called non-Trinitarian. They don't believe in the Trinity. They believe in three separate entities. And they believe that Jesus was this created entity, but who is not God. So a person who came and was supposed to, usher the flock towards salvation, but wasn't actually God himself.
And I think even moving away from just the theological component of it, I think that all of the people, even those who have been hurt by and are angered towards the organization, will talk about the kindness of the people who are Jehovah's Witnesses. Our story is not a takedown of the people who are Jehovah's Witnesses. It's an examination of a very specific policy that critics say protects pedophiles. That's what the investigation is about. But the draw of Jehovah's Witnesses, for so many people, they were baptized into that religion. They were born into the families. They're baptized when they're older and children.
Yeah.
They are. The life is relatively simple, very structured life. I mean, you are really told everything that you can and cannot do.
And you're busy, too. They keep you busy. You have to go out door to door every so many hours per month. You go to service twice a week.
And when they go door to door, just to interrupt for a sec, when they go door to door, when they come to your door and they knock and then they leave, they're required to take notes about everything the conversation that they had with you. Those notes are all stored. They're field reports, they're called. Stored in the Jehovah's Witnesses compounds, right?
Yeah.
And then
it's like a timesheet, like they are.
And
if you put in their hours.
If you show any kind of interest that maybe you might be swayed, you're marked down as someone to come back to the next week. So when you talk to the people who we've spoken to, and specifically about that door-to-door preaching, the fact that if the organization is as accused protecting pedophiles, as they're accused of being, those people are going door to door. They're knocking on people's doors, and that's a cause for concern for a lot of the folks who we spoke to.
Well, I think this is all fascinating. Do you have anything you guys want to add, or you can let people know where they can see the piece, when it's going to be airing across the country?
Yeah. Well, the show is Saturday at 7 o'clock on CTV, and the day after, if you can't see it on CTV, you can watch it on CTV's W5 YouTube channel. And it will be widely available.
I think it's actually up right shortly after on that night.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hours later?
Yeah.
And it'll also be on ctvnews.ca. You can read the full story. We have an interactive graphic that one of our producers has created.
I'm actually really proud of this. Philip Hahn in the web department has put together a really beautiful.
It's comprehensive, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's interactive. You can go online. I think that's going to be up on Saturday morning at 7. Ish. Not that poor Phil's gonna have to work early, but just you can see all the things that you didn't know about the Jehovah's Witnesses, explaining further the 2-witness rule. We had so much stuff, even though we've dedicated an hour. We had so many great components that we couldn't put on the broadcast that we have
but
online.
we put them on the web, right? Yeah, they all live. Everything that we shot, it lives. Yeah.
And I think that this is going to be a real eye opener for Canadians, and I think for the people who we spoke to, who felt silenced by sexual abuse as children, their voices will be heard. And for that, I'm so grateful to the people who shared their nightmares with us, and for you to know about the 2-witness rule. So I hope you can join us on Saturday at 7 or on the YouTube channel after that.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Avery,
Thanks.
Derek.
Beautiful editing by this
thank
man,
you
too.
so much, Andre.
Yeah. back of the head.